This session is Data and Analytics, New Advances and Best Practices. And I love the idea, like I said, that you all selected this session to start MURTEC because we feel that data and analytics have come such a long way. And there's so much more to learn about it. We're going to explore some best practices. And I'm thrilled also that our panelists today are both top restaurant technology leaders. And I don't mean that in a hyperbolic sense. Literally, Robyn Kesler was named a MURTEC 2021 Top Women in Restaurant Technology Innovator. And Courtney Maxedon was named a MURTEC 2022 Top Women in Restaurant Technology Rising Star. So I'm thrilled to have them on the stage here to discuss data and analytics. We're going to start with an overview of the topic from, I want each of the panelists to introduce themselves to you, who they are and what they do. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what data analytics means to each of their brands. Robyn, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Robyn Kesler. I am the VP of IT for Tupelo Honey Hospitality. We are a restaurant group located in Asheville, North Carolina. We have 22 locations across 3 different time zones. I've been with the company for 8.5 years in totality. I have been running the IT department this whole time. We have a small but mighty team that supports the whole company. Late last year, we onboarded our first business analyst, and it's been a really exciting journey thus far. And I'm really excited to kind of talk about some of our experiences that we've had, where we are in our process, and just kind of go through where we are in the stage.
Cool. Thank you, Robyn. Courtney.
Hi, I'm Courtney Maxedon. I'm the Vice President of Interactive Marketing at Kahala Brands. Kahala Brands owns and franchises 28 different restaurants. Cold Stone Creamery is our biggest. The interactive team really functions like an internal digital agency to support all digital initiatives for all of our brands. I've been at Kahala for almost 6 years, and it's been quite the data journey.
Cool. Well, thank you. And I'd like now, before we start digging into more specific issues, I would love each of you to speak to the importance of data and analytics from your brand's point of view. And Courtney, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so data informs all of the decisions that we make. And as I mentioned, it's been quite the journey, even over the last 6 years. We have 28 different brands, so that puts us in a unique disposition of whenever we onboard technology or when we think about data, we really have to think about it in kind of a templated approach. One size fits all initially is what we used to think. But as we've grown in our data journey and we have more data available to us now than ever before, we have really learned that each brand functions very differently when it comes to data. For example, our frequency for our dessert brands is obviously a lot less than our breakfast or lunchtime brands. So that has really shifted how we think about data. And there was a recent NRN study, I don't know if any of you saw it, but it was on the data-driven restaurant. And over 50% of restaurant operators said they were really confident in the data utilization within their organization, but there's still 46% that weren't as confident as to how they use and optimize data. And I just thought that was really interesting. Like, we have grown so much at Kahala in our data journey, and I think as an industry, we've grown a lot, but we still have a ways to go.
Mm-hmm. That's a great snapshot of where so many restaurants are at right now.
Yeah.
That's I love that. Robyn, the same question, an overview of the importance of data and analytics, but from your brand's point of view. And one thing I love is these two brands are very different and complement one another in some nice ways.
Absolutely. You know, I was thinking about what I was going to speak today, and a lot of it is so different than a franchisee or, different brands and all of that. So I do love the fact that we just have the same store, in one place, but it does create our own kind of nuances and things like that. And, our number one goal is to always ensure that the customer has a great dining experience and that our employees feel empowered with doing the best job that they can with the tools that they have. And so, with this, we always want to make sure that what we have is working for what we need. In kind of a little bit different shift, I feel as if, restaurant industry runs on intuition. It's, what feels good? What do you think your customers want? do you want to put on the menu? And with all of this information that we have, I feel like we're at a really great place as an industry that we can start really driving all of that information into one place. We recently had a menu rollout that we dropped a menu item off that was pretty popular. Our menu's going in a new direction. We have seasonal menus and things like that. And we decided to take a menu item off, and we ran a pilot. And since we onboarded this new business analyst, we were able to truly define that, with new tools that we have created, that when we rolled out this new menu with this extremely popular menu item, menu in that sales grouping declined rapidly. So we could go back to the R&D team very quickly and say, wait, we're in this pilot. Let's get us back there. So data drives everything. It can back up any intuition that you have. It can drive creativity, make you answer a lot of questions, and really kind of evaluate what you're putting on the plate and what you're doing in your restaurant.
Cool. I love that you both noted how data informs every decision now, which is the way it should be. It's available. We always make decisions based on available information, and I know that's why a lot of people are in this room right now. I want to transition to a discussion that we're calling this the marketing spotlight, and I'm saying that because Courtney in her role as director of VP of Interactive Marketing at Kahala, will speak to data and analytics informing the marketing endeavor. So, Courtney, I have a few questions specific to you. First, I just wanted to start with the basic question of how to collect and analyze customer preference data.
Yeah, so we don't collect a lot of explicit customer preference data. Like when they sign up for our loyalty program, we don't really ask a lot of preferences or allergies, but we do collect a lot of implicit customer preference data. For example, menu items. So we have, some of our brands have a CDP, and I'll reference that a lot throughout the conversation. It's not sponsored by our CDP partner, but they are in this room. We get a lot of menu item data, and especially from digital transactions, we get more menu item data than a traditional in-store transaction. So we're able to see rate of return by menu item. And so we can really understand preferences that way, just understanding what menu items are resonating, what their rate of return with the brand. And then for our brands that don't have a CDP, because each brand is different, we have vendors like Tattle, and that really helps us drive into those menu items as well, to understand what % of revenue is coming from those items, and if there's an incident involvement needed with some of our popular items, and that will help operations really dig in also to adjust from there. But from a marketing standpoint, we're working on optimizing customer communication channels based on preference. So if we have push notifications, SMS, email, and our goal is to integrate all of those systems together so we can optimize, if a customer wants to have an SMS and they respond more frequently to SMS messages versus email, then we send them SMS. And same with push and email, just kind of where they want to get their messages from us.
Cool. So digging in a little bit more into this idea of preferences, we would love to hear how, some of your advice about implementing personalization and segmentation.
Yeah, so we do a lot of segmentation. For our brands that have a CDP, we do segmentation based on behavior. So what's really cool about our CDP partner is that we're able to integrate all of our data sources into one central database, and they identify customers that aren't part of our loyalty or e-club programs by first name, last four of the credit card. They take that customer and match it to a known profile within their database. So that really opens up all of these other customers that we wouldn't have been able to communicate with through advertising. And, if we have 15 to 35% loyalty adoption, that leaves a huge group of customers that we historically haven't been able to talk to. So we do segmentation for all of our customers, including those non-loyalty, for advertising. So nurture, win back, inactive, and prospecting too, which is a group of not yet customers modeled off of our highest value customers. So we do segmenting for advertising, and we also do a lot of segmenting for loyalty too, just based on customer behavior. If they've been in more frequently, maybe we don't give them as much of a discount as someone that hasn't been in a year, for example. So that way we're managing the total discount that the franchisees need to absorb. And then for personalization, we do a lot of personalization just based on where the customer's at in their journey with us. If they are a starter member, so we have their phone number but not fully registered for a loyalty account, we can send them messages, advertising, or SMS if they're opted into that channel to help convert them into being a fully registered member, because we know the customer lifetime value is so much greater if they're fully registered. So it's different personalization options, marketing messages just based on their behavior with us.
Yeah, and you mentioned marketing. The next thing we would love to hear is how data and analytics can inform and enhance marketing strategies and tactics.
Yeah, so that segmentation piece has been hugely successful for us. Being able to talk to all of our non-loyalty customers through advertising, that has increased our return on ad spend anywhere from, let's say, 60 to 200%, just because we're talking to our actual customers versus a more interest-based advertising approach. So that's been big. And then knowing our loyalty versus non-loyalty metrics in terms of customer lifetime value and frequency, that has also been really big for us, because we're able to supply our operations team with that data. And our loyalty members are coming in 3 to 4 times more, depending on the brand, than our non-loyalty members. And they're spending more, and their lifetime value is obviously greater for those reasons. And so our operations team can then go to our franchisees and really tell them the impact of the program to help with loyalty adoption. And then we also look at new customer acquisition rate and retention rate by brand and store. So that will also help our operations team dig in. So if a store has a really low retention rate, that's where they focus their efforts. Maybe they need to look at something in store. And if there's, a low new customer acquisition rate, then we build up our prospecting list. So it's all of these different data points that we use to really help make our decisions. And then for our brands that don't have a CDP, this is the last thing that I'll touch on, is we did a recent connected TV versus linear or broadcast TV test to really see what channel was bringing in more store visits and the cost per visit. And being more digital, I was really hoping that, CTV would win out there. But what we found, and we never had this data before because of smart TV. So now we're able to look at all of that smart TV data and traditional broadcast. I'll preface that. But what we found is that each channel really had its, similar cost per store visit, but the audience overlap was only 2%. So only 2% of the audience saw a connected TV and a traditional broadcast. So that really informs our media mix for this year, because we know each channel is equally important because the audiences are very different.
Yeah, interesting. And you mentioned operations several times, and
Yeah.
I wanted to one more question
Yeah.
for Courtney before we move to our next section. The idea of data that touches on sales trends,
Yeah.
and how that potentially informs operations.
Yeah, so we obviously look at same-store sales, like I'm sure everybody else in this room, but we take those KPIs like retention rate and new customer acquisition rate, and we marry that to same-store sales. And we can see a direct correlation with same-store sales in that top group with a higher retention rate, the higher retention rate group. Same with loyalty adoption. We marry that to same-store sales. And knowing the importance of loyalty and that customer lifetime value, we also created a crew member loyalty report. So we provide that to operations. It's every single crew member in every store, and it tells us what their loyalty adoption, so total transactions and how many of those were loyalty. And our operations team works with our franchisees and crew members. Maybe there's more training involved. How do they ask every single customer? Most of our sales are still in store, so that front-facing crew member is so important in driving that loyalty adoption. For our non-CDP brands, we look at Google reviews to see trends. We aggregate all of that to see what's increasing, what's decreasing. And then last, we provide KPI reports on a quarterly basis. And this comes from all different data sources. We have the retention rate that I've referenced several times. We have wallet share from a different vendor, Medallia, and brand perception. And then, we just look at all of those different points together.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. That was like I said, that was the marketing corner.
Yeah.
Our next section is more like, I'm going to call it informally, it's like an onstage buyer's guide. It doesn't mean we're endorsing solutions. We won't be getting that granular, but some best practices for brands that are, you're all on a data journey, but depending on where you're at, there are certain things you really want to know to take that next step. So I want to start by talking about how, where attendees like the folks who have joined us can begin or enhance their implementation of data-driven strategies. And Robyn, I'd like to start with you.
Absolutely. So like I mentioned, this it feels like we're on this new business analyst journey because we just hired our analyst, right? But I think what's really important is when you're starting to kind of get started on this journey, we call it this data journey, always start with what you have and what gaps you need to identify. I think it's really important that we all kind of take a step back. We're at a restaurant technology conference and that is so amazing, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure to onboard, enhance, do a lot of things like technology and stay up to speed with everything that's going on in the industry. And I do think that's very valid. That's something that you need to do. But I like to use this example, in the past, and when I'm at a conference or discussing with my peers in the industry, I'm always sometimes a little bit embarrassed to announce that, we still rely very heavily on Excel. It's just who we are. It's a restaurant industry. It's just who we are. And last year, we decided to lean into that. We took a step back and said, this is really important. How do we need to lean into it? So when we hired our analyst, what we made sure is that this person could rock an Excel spreadsheet. I did not need to shove somebody into our environment that couldn't advance what we already had. So I just like to advocate for what you have, lean into it, make sure it makes sense, and then go from there. I wish somebody would have stood up on a stage and told me that in the past, because I think it can sometimes be really intimidating when you're in an environment like this and these massive brands have really cool features and lots of platforms, and not everybody has the capability to do that. So I really like to advocate and kind of stand on that podium and say that today. I also think that, identify your gaps, but also start collecting really clean data. I laugh and say I'm on this journey, but when I was speaking with an employee about what I was going to discuss on this panel, she was like, are you kidding me? We started this data journey 10 years ago. When I started at Tupelo, my first task after never working in a restaurant was to implement a new POS. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So that project fizzled, but what we talked about is, well, something's not working, right? So what's wrong? And what we found was that the data in our POS was junk, right? It had been mismanaged. There was a ton of information out there. And so what we did is gathered a data team and scaled it way back. And I ended up recreating and restarting our entire point of sale. It didn't have any disruptions on the front of house. It was zero impact to the operations team. But what it allowed us to do is create this beautiful database that was really intentional in our numbering PLUs and how we looked at all of this information. And what I'm really proud to say is that we still use that today. Our efforts that we put in 10 years ago to make sure that all of our data was really, really good is really starting to take impact now that we have somebody to look at it. So no matter where you are, start. And you might be well beyond, and this is not a hot take, but it's something that I think is really important for people to hear, especially if you're a brand of our size or just getting started. Also, somebody has to look at this information. And I think it's really important that you assign somebody, whether it is somebody you have existing, whether it's somebody you hire in, but it's really important that somebody is identifying and watching your data at all times. If you could have 1,000 dashboards and 1,000 reports and 1,000 Excel spreadsheets, but if nobody's actually looking at it it's completely irrelevant, right? Like, it's really important that somebody's asking questions, raising their hand and saying, hey, this item needs to come back on the menu. It's really important, or identifying your guest segmentation or whatever it is. But I think that's always important to kind of take the technology out of it a little bit and just baseline of what you actually need before you get started.
The cleanliness is a really good topic, and it's something that we don't really talk a lot about when talking about data, but there's been times on our data journey where I wasn't as confident in our data because it wasn't clean, and clean data is actionable. So if you don't start from like a really clean place, then it really, there's no foundation.
Right.
So.
And people will constantly question. Right? Yeah. If you don't have the same thing across all applications, then somebody's going to ask you why this item was in this sales revenue group, or all of these things. And then they start to discount what you worked really hard to put together. So starting there is always a must.
Yes. And I love another point that you made on having someone manage the programs, because that's something, as we've evolved, that's still a challenge for us. And we have a team of 15, and there's not just one point person that's managing it. And it is challenging because we have so many other responsibilities. Obviously, data is so important, but it also takes a lot of time to learn the technology and then to dive in to the data points.
It's a really good point. And we do make the point now that you no longer need a data scientist on staff on a daily basis. But the automated insights do need to both of your points, need somebody driving. Courtney, the same question that Robyn answered, but from the point of view of Kahala Brands and your role in interactive marketing. It's like where can brands either get started or enhance their the data-driven insights?
Yeah, I would say very similar to what Robyn said. Like, you just have to start, and you have to start somewhere. A lot of our brands don't have a lot of data. They don't even have an e-club because they're a lot smaller. It isn't one size fits all. It's very different for each brand. We started looking at like native data points within Meta, for example, to see how our campaigns were performing, and looking at our loyalty dashboard to really understand how our loyalty was performing, and then has evolved into a CDP and so forth. But that won't be the case for all of our brands. So I would say you just have to start, and you have to start somewhere. And my recommendation on starting would be acquiring that customer data, because I think that's the foundation for marketing.
So we'd also like to discuss, if you're looking for a solution, what are the must-haves? What are the nice-to-haves, and but more importantly, what are the must-haves? Robyn, you've been through some of this.
I have, absolutely.
We want to learn from you.
I love it. And again, a lot of this is me standing on this podium advocating for the size of my brand and all of that, and where I will just, I could talk to the wall about all of this stuff. So thank you for listening to me. But, figure out, again, where your gaps are and make that list and stick to it. I think that is really, really, really important. There are amazing technology vendors here in this hotel right now that can do a whole lot. But even just with Courtney and I, it's so obvious that everybody's tech stack is so unique, right? So what might work for one brand will absolutely not work for another. So it's just really important to kind of hold your guns, right? Like, if I talk to a vendor, I'm very honest sometimes about like, hey, you're great. I love what you're doing, but you're not going to work for me. So please go on, right? But I think it's just really important to stick with that. Also, does a platform or solution have enough for what you need, or is it too much? Something that I'm curious to see if it's maybe a buzz around MURTEC this year, but I do think there's a little bit more talk around the IT creep on the P&L. So I think it's really important that when you are looking for a solution, it better meet all of your goals and not be out of budget or something that you cannot afford, or it might just have too much technology, or maybe you don't have all the data that you need, and maybe you need to take a step back and understand really what you need from an application. Something else that I think is really important too, because we are all so intentional about what we put into our tech stack, is if you are vetting a system or looking for something, just something that we found extremely valuable is always have what we call a pull cord. In any agreement, if you get into something and if it isn't what you're looking for specifically, make sure you can get back out, right? Again, I always advocate for, the IT budget, making sure that everything is very, very, very specific. has a great ROI, will be benefiting the company and not just putting stuff in. You want to make sure that like every year when you're looking at budget reviews, that the platform or solution that you've put into place is really, really generating some really great things for the company. Again, like we've already mentioned it, but it's just something to think about. Somebody has to manage it, even if it's not a data scientist, or maybe it's somebody on your team. Somebody has to advocate for that. When we put in our inventory platform, a lot of people that we spoke to said, hire somebody that manages this platform, and you have to dedicate people and resources. Technology is amazing, and I had a really long conversation about AI last night, and yes, computers are going to take over the world at some point, but humans still have to be there and advocate and do a lot for these systems and make sure they're running smoothly. And so again, is it redundant? Will it drive value? And obviously this again is not anything new, but please make sure it integrates with your systems. Everybody knows this, but it is so necessary. We no longer live in a time where we should be doing anything manual. It needs to integrate with your systems, your tech stack, what you have the capability to bring it into your systems and make sure it's like running is right off the bat, right? Like don't wait for development, don't wait for these things, like advocate for specifically what you need, because when you get that in, your CEO, your CFO is going to want to see all these amazing returns and just be ready to hit the ground running. And I think that's just something that we always just have to keep top of mind.
Yeah, and the integration reminder is near and dear to my heart. I'm going to be presenting data from our annual restaurant technology study tomorrow, and spoiler alert, integration is still a tough challenge.
It is. It's hard.
Yeah.
Courtney, same question about whether you're looking for a completely new solution or upgrades. What are the must-haves, the nice-to-haves? What's your advice there?
Yeah, from a marketing standpoint, again, I would say acquiring that customer data is so important because it makes your advertising more effective. It makes your segmentation more effective. You can personalize. So acquiring that customer data through an e-club or loyalty, whether traditional or non-traditional, that is my number one. I think there's a lot of vendors, kind of what you referenced, Robyn, that are nice to haves, but not a need to have, and it will be dependent on each brand and what your own data needs are. But we've even identified solutions from data. We had a brand that had a high customer churn issue. Customers were coming in once and they weren't coming back. And so that led us to, we really need to dig in and figure out what's going on with the experience to help get those customers and also help win them back if they do have a bad experience. So that's where Tattle, for example, came into play there. And then I would say, I love your pull cord idea. And I would also say we pilot every single tech solution that we want to implement. So our CDP, we piloted to make sure that that investment was going to give us a return. We piloted Tattle. We pilot every single vendor for, however long we deem necessary, 30, 60, 90 days before we agree to a contract.
Makes a lot of sense.
And always advocate for that longer pilot if you need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It's just like buying a used car. We've can negotiate anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And a vendor that really wants to work with you will always be willing to do that.
Yeah, and they want to prove their worth too. So
absolutely. It's a true partnership, not just a contract.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
It makes so much sense. We have time for questions from all of you. There may be a mic runner in the room, but the room is small enough that if you have a question and you want to speak loudly and clearly, we'll hear it. I don't see super well. If you see somebody raising hand with a question, we'd be psyched.
Go ahead.
In the back.
Yeah. Cowboy hat.
Okay, well, let's do this live. I'll project the background.
Thank you.
Scott Landers with Figure 8. Really appreciate all your insights around managing data and having a person. Somebody mentioned the bloating kind of technology landscape that we've seen over the last few years. So I'm curious, as you're looking at it now, 2024 for the next 3 years, like which part of the tech stack are you looking at as kind of most important for you? Point of sale, profit order rate, your CPE, your loyalty. I'd love to figure out each of your things about where that data.
Go ahead.
Okay. I would say point of sale is so foundational. Like you need to have that good data that also can integrate with other systems. So for us, that has been a journey of getting that foundation put into play for many, many years, probably a decade for some of our brands. So that's certainly foundational. And then we move on to loyalty or e-club. And then for brands that have those established programs, then we're looking to implement a CDP. So we have 2 brands that have it right now. We're expanding to 3 more brands this year. And then depending on resources, we'll expand or not. But that foundation of POS, yeah, instrumental. And then online ordering, like that just feeds into it, right? Like they all feed into this centralized database. Our digital sales, it's not a huge percentage of our overall sales yet, about 25%. So we're looking to grow that because we get more customer data from those sales, more menu item data. Our average check is higher. So there's a lot of reasons why we're trying to grow that, but that's just, I consider that part of POS, if you will. But
yeah, I always say the POS is the brain of the company, period, hands down, right? It is where you get what your customer wants because you have all the supplemental information. But something that we're really focusing on with our business analysts that we just hired is, operational reporting and menu reporting. I am not in marketing. I am sure they do a very wonderful job of all these marketing reports and everything, but that all comes in through this. But we've missed the operational efficiencies because we're always looking at labor, we're always looking at quicker table turn times. And so a lot of what our new analyst is analyzing is all menu data and where the customer fits in and repeat customers from marketing data. But we're really, really, really focused on operational efficiencies this year specifically.
Well, thank you both. More questions?
Oh gosh.
yeah.
We're in a very similar kind of place in our BI life cycle.
Yeah.
We hired analysts about 18 months ago.
Great.
They're of a similar size. We're a unique concept, which is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
We have 18 unique concepts.
Oh, wow.
6 front doors. One multi-unit locations. So I'm curious, in the last year, what would you say are your sort of biggest wins in terms of, when that BI analyst is able to deliver something, whether it's the operations or whether it's the marketing, really allow that person to change behaviors and drive value as a result of those behavior changes?
I love this question. Literally the first day, her name's Mary. She's awesome. She came in and she's never worked for a restaurant. Again, I just needed somebody that could rock a pivot table, right? I just needed this thing and I knew that she could grow it. And she came in and just mastered this beautiful menu mix report, right? We run pilots and just like our menu pilot, we just went through a menu pilot for our new spring menu. And she was able to quickly walk in, learn about the menu, which, in our world is very complex to us, and set up a daily reporting metric, which is not something we've ever had in the past for menu mix, right? She was able to show pretty easily, if an item dropped off, where it might have gone to, where other customers are coming in and what they're purchasing, if we took this item off, and created this dash that we just have never had. She's truly creating a lot of information that we've always wanted, always assumed, always had all of this, but sat down with the COO, CFO, what do you want to see? And truly drove those decision makings. Because a pilot for us is 2 weeks, right? We do pilot, then we go, and then we run. And so those decisions have to be made very quickly. And usually in that pilot, we're kind of looking for menu edits or something pretty superficial. But this really drove. I can't hone in on that. The menu item that we dropped, we were able to prove that we need it to bring it back, and we're actually bringing it back in a more elevated experience of the menu item itself. So it was just that really quick turnaround and proof of we made the right decision and we can really stand by it. And we're excited to see her grow. Mm-hmm.
More questions?
Mm-hmm.
So the restaurant industry contracts and expands, the technology industry. Back today, acquisition. So a lot of these organizations are, a POS company buys, payment provider buys a private, and then inventory, labor schedule. In your world, does that make your life easier because now you have a single organization that provides you all the services? Or does that fill you with fear because now you seem to be more in bed, if you will, with a single vendor and have less leverage to get out of that?
Man, you want to take it? I'm happy to, but
I would say it doesn't fill me with fear. We don't have any vendor, and I would never foresee us going down that path where we would have all of our solutions with one vendor. We have a lot of custom integrations. We have a unique POS system, so having vendors that can integrate there is important. And we've also invested a ton of time and resources in our POS integrations. So even though like Olo has, acquired a CDP, I don't foresee us going down that path where it's just, we've already built what we've built. And once you build it, it's really hard and takes a long time to move.
Yeah. I would say it kind of depends on the acquisition, right? And if it feels right and if it's integrated into your current systems now, that's great, right? But I think sometimes it can be a little bit messy. We're in this right now with one of our vendors, and it's gone okay, but it's benefited us because, they will have a single login hopefully soon. I think I'm a little bit on the fence, right? Because I don't, like Courtney said, I don't want one system that does everything, because then you pigeonhole yourself into this universe and you're beholden to their advances and non-advances, right? But at the same time, I think if it's an intentional move and it's something we were maybe looking for anyways, we're okay with it. But I really like that question, and I'm going to think a little bit more on it, because it's very thought-provoking for sure.
And it's becoming more common, way more common.
Yeah. And we've even done think tanks on single solution or best in breed combination of things, and it's not going away. It's great question. I think there are more questions, and we have a few more minutes.
Go ahead in the back in the blue. We use NCR Aloha, but when again at that 10-year ago data journey. We had a different staff, right? We had a different team. That was a long time ago. And the guy that was running it really thought we were going to be like this, I guess like a coding center or something. He had a very like specific idea of how he wanted the IT department to run. So we started getting replicated data. So we've had raw Aloha replicated data for 10 years. And so we have that. Our new analyst is very good at SQL. So we're starting to like actually dig into a lot of this information that we've always had, right? We can go back and find any information that we want because we've just been hoarding that for a long time.
Cool. And just a reminder, we're not necessarily endorsing vendors up here. You know how this works.
Go ahead.
Robyn, you said there was this kind of IT creep, and you said it's important that you measure the various tools you have in your MURTEC stack or your tech stack overall. How are you, what are you looking at when you sit back down with the senior exec team and say, this is working,
I don't have a specific answer to that. A lot of it is sitting down with the C-suite and making those decisions of, what we're looking at right now. Marketing and loyalty isn't a huge focus for us. So we haven't been putting a ton of emphasis on that. We want to grow our menu, our customer base through, repeat customers and just elevated service. So when you're looking at that, it's kind of what's fitting the need at the time. And it's always asking the question of, how you're stumping me a little bit, I think, because I don't have a silver bullet for how you measure that. And that's why a lot of my, when I stand up here, it's so individualized as to what the people who are making the decisions need in that moment. And it's just questioning it. And a lot of it runs on intuition too, of like, this is what we think we need at this time, and how does that work? So.
Yeah. And Robyn mentioned the C-suite. Just a reminder, tomorrow we actually have several sessions that touch on a CEO perspective in acknowledgement that, the IT is not a line item off somewhere. It is fully integrated into just about every initiative that a brand can have.
Oh, yeah.
So a great question. I think some of the best questions are the ones we don't have quick answers for. I'd say we have time for one more question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we set out on a CDP journey because we knew that interest-based targeting for advertising was going away with all of the privacy and cookie legislations. Like, that was going away. Our ads were becoming less effective. So we were looking for ways to communicate with more customers that weren't part of our loyalty. We knew that when we were to do that targeting to our loyalty or e-club lists, our ads were way more effective, right? There are known customers. But our loyalty adoption rates are, 15 to 35%, depending on the brand. So that's just a really small subset of customers. So we really needed to understand like the 60 to 80% that we weren't understanding at the time. And so we were looking for identifying those non-loyalty customers and being able to use that data in advertising. There's tons of CDPs out there, but that was something that was really important to us. And the partner we went with had a more modular approach. So we could, go down the path of identity management and use that in advertising and then add on other things later. And then the pilot, not all CDP vendors wanted to pilot. There's a lot of investment to stand up that program with all of the integrations. So that is, a stopgap for us. We need to be able to pilot before we sign on in a contract.
All right, well, this has been fantastic. I want to ask, before we end, I want you all to please thank these panelists. This has been incredible.